The yellow school bus rumbles down Maple Street, its brakes squealing as it stops in front of our modest two-story house with the white picket fence that Mom always insisted on painting every spring. I'm 8 years old, clutching my backpack straps like they're lifelines, my heart hammering with the excitement that only comes from getting your first math test back with a perfect score. Dad stands in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, his weathered face showing no emotion as he watches me stumble off the bus. The morning light catches the deep lines around his eyes, lines that seem to have been carved by disappointment rather than laughter. He's already dressed for work at the factory, his uniform pressed and clean, his work boots polished to a military shine. "Don't forget your lunch money's in your backpack pocket," he calls out, his voice carrying the same flat tone he uses for everything, whether he's telling me to take out the trash or asking Mom to pass the salt. I turn to wave, my test paper crumpled in my small fist, desperate to show him what I've accomplished. But he's already closing the door, the sound echoing in my chest, like a door slamming shut on my hopes. This is my earliest memory of trying to impress Richard Reynolds, my father. A man who seemed to view the world through a lens of perpetual disappointment, where nothing was ever quite good enough, where praise was as rare as snow in July, and where love was expressed through duty rather than words. The elementary school hallway smells like floor wax and childhood dreams. Mrs. Henderson, my third-grade teacher, has kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a smile that makes you believe anything is possible. She hands back our math tests, and when she reaches my desk, she pauses. "Excellent work, Michael. You finished first again and every answer is correct." She places a gold star sticker on my paper, and for a moment, I feel like I could fly. This is it, I think. This is what will make Dad proud. This perfect score, this recognition of my abilities, this proof that I'm special. The afternoon sun slants through our kitchen window as I burst through the front door, my backpack bouncing against my back like an excited puppy. Dad sits at the Formica table, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee from his favorite mug, the one with the chip on the handle that Mom keeps threatening to throw away. Dad, look what I got." I hold up my math worksheet, the gold star catching the light like a tiny sun. My voice trembles with excitement, with the absolute certainty that this moment will change everything between us. He glances up from his paper, his eyes focusing on the test for exactly 3 seconds before returning to the sports section. "That's nice, Michael. Go wash your hands for dinner." That's it. No celebration, no proud smile, no phone call to Grandma Reynolds to brag about his brilliant son. Just, "That's nice," and instructions to wash my hands. The gold star suddenly feels like fool's gold, worthless and tarnished. Years blend together in a montage of similar moments. Middle school honor roll certificates met with nods of acknowledgement. High school debate team victories dismissed with, "I hope you're keeping up with your regular homework." Academic awards that earned me handshakes from teachers and silence from the man whose approval I craved most. The college acceptance letter from Harvard arrives on a Tuesday in March, my senior year. I remember the exact day because it was the first time I thought I might actually see my father smile. The envelope is thick, cream-colored, official. My hands shake as I open it, already knowing what it says but needing to read the words anyway. "Dear Michael Reynolds, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to Harvard University's class of 2007. Mom screams when I tell her, actually screams with joy, and hugs me so tight I can barely breathe. She calls her sister, then her mother, then what seems like half the neighborhood. The kitchen fills with the sound of celebration, of pride, of dreams coming true. Dad walks in from the garage, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. What's all the commotion about? "Michael got into Harvard," Mom announces, her voice pitched high with excitement. "Our son is going to Harvard University." He looks at me, then at the letter in my hands, then back at me. For a moment I think I see something flicker in his eyes, some spark of recognition or pride, but it's gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "That's an expensive school," he says finally. "Hope you thought about how you're going to pay for it." The celebration deflates like a punctured balloon. Mom's face falls, and I feel that familiar ache in my chest. The one that comes from reaching for something that's always just out of grasp. Harvard is everything I dreamed it would be and more. the brick buildings dripping with history, the professors who challenge me to think beyond the boundaries of what I thought possible, the classmates who become lifelong friends. I thrive in this environment where intellectual curiosity is celebrated, where being smart isn't something to hide or apologize for. But even as I excel, even as I make the dean's list and win academic awards, the phone calls home remain stilted, formal affairs. "How are your grades?" Dad asks. "I made the dean's list again," I tell him, pride creeping into my voice despite myself. "That's good. Don't let it go to your head." Always the caveat. Always the reminder that success is temporary, that pride comes before a fall, that I shouldn't expect too much from life. Graduation day arrives with all the pomp and circumstance befitting one of America's oldest universities. I sit in Harvard Yard, wearing my cap and gown, surrounded by parents who beam with pride and wave cameras in the air. Mom is there, of course, crying happy tears and taking enough photos to fill 3 albums. Dad sits beside her, uncomfortable in his best suit, his face a mask of polite attention. When they call my name, when I walk across that stage to receive my diploma magna cum laude, I hear Mom's cheers above the crowd. I look out into the audience, searching for Dad's face, hoping to see some glimmer of pride, some acknowledgement of what I've accomplished. He's clapping politely, the same way he might clap at a church service or a school play. Present but not engaged, there but not truly with me. The job at Goldman Sachs comes with a salary that makes my parents' eyes widen when I tell them. It's more money than Dad has made in any 5 years combined, and I'm just 22 years old. Surely this will impress him, I think. Surely this will be enough. "That's a lot of money," he says when I call to tell him about the offer. "Don't spend it all in one place." No congratulations, no pride in his voice. Just practical advice delivered in the same tone he might use to remind me to check my oil. Wall Street is brutal and exhilarating, a world where fortunes are made and lost before lunch, where the bright and ambitious come to prove themselves against the best and brightest. I work 18-hour days, live on coffee and ambition, and slowly, methodically, build a reputation as someone who can spot opportunities others miss. My first big deal nets the firm $12 million in profit. My bonus alone is more than most people make in a lifetime. I'm 24 years old, and I'm already being headhunted by competitor firms who've heard about the young analyst who has the golden touch. I got promoted to vice president, I tell Dad during one of our Sunday phone calls. I'm the youngest VP in the firm's history. That's nice, son. Your mother wants to know if you're eating enough vegetables. Nice. Everything I accomplish is nice. Getting into Harvard was nice. Graduating with honors was nice. Landing a job that most people would kill for was nice. Breaking records at one of the most prestigious investment banks in the world was nice. I start to wonder if anything I do will ever be more than nice to him. The years blur together in a haze of success that feels increasingly hollow. I switch firms, make more money, gain more recognition. Business Week writes an article about me, calling me the golden boy of Wall Street. I'm invited to speak at conferences, to share my insights with audiences of hundreds. But the phone calls home remain the same. "I was featured in Forbes magazine," I tell him. "That's good. Don't let it go to your head." Always the same refrain. Always the reminder not to get too comfortable, not to expect too much, not to think I'm special. By the time I'm 30, I've achieved everything I thought I wanted. The corner office, the 7-figure salary, the respect of my peers. I've proven myself in every way that matters in the world of high finance. Yet I still feel like that 8-year-old boy holding up a math test with a gold star, desperate for a word of approval that never comes. I meet Jennifer at a charity gala, one of those black tie affairs where New York's elite gather to write tax-deductible checks and feel good about themselves. She's beautiful, intelligent, and completely unimpressed by my success, which somehow makes me want to impress her even more. "So you're the famous Michael Reynolds," she says when we're introduced. "I've heard about you. All good things, I hope," I reply, falling back on the kind of smooth banter that served me well in boardrooms and cocktail parties. "Actually, I heard you're a workaholic who's forgotten how to have fun," she says with a smile that takes the sting out of her words. She's right, of course. I've been so focused on achieving, on proving myself, on trying to earn something that seems perpetually out of reach, that I've forgotten how to simply enjoy life. We date for 2 years before I work up the courage to propose. Not because I'm unsure of my feelings, but because I'm terrified of what Dad will say when I tell him I'm getting married. Will he approve of Jennifer? Will he think I'm making a mistake? Will he find some way to diminish this moment like he's diminished every other milestone in my life? The proposal goes perfectly. We're in Central Park, at the spot where we had our first real conversation, and when I get down on one knee, she says yes before I can even finish the question. We're both crying and laughing, and for a moment, I feel like the luckiest man alive. I call home the next day, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. Dad, I have some news. Jennifer and I are engaged. There's a pause, and I hold my breath, waiting for his response. That's nice, son. She seems like a good girl. Your mother wants to know when you're planning the wedding. Nice. My engagement, the most important decision of my adult life, is nice. The wedding is everything Jennifer dreamed of and more. We rent a vineyard in Napa Valley, invite 200 of our closest friends and family, and spare no expense on what we hope will be the perfect day. Jennifer looks radiant in her grandmother's dress, and I feel like the luckiest man alive when she walks down the aisle. Dad gives a toast at the reception, short and sweet, wishing us happiness and prosperity. It's a fine toast, appropriate and heartfelt in its way. But I can't help but notice that he doesn't mention being proud of me, doesn't talk about watching me grow up, doesn't say any of the things that other fathers say at their sons' weddings. To Michael and Jennifer, he concludes, raising his glass. May they have a long and happy marriage. The crowd applauds, glasses clink, and life moves on. But I'm left with that familiar ache, that sense that something important is missing, that I'm still that little boy desperate for approval that never comes. Our first child, Emma, is born on a snowy February morning after 14 hours of labor that leaves Jennifer exhausted but radiant. I hold my daughter for the first time, this tiny, perfect person who looks like a combination of her mother and me, and I'm overwhelmed by a love so fierce it takes my breath away. She's beautiful, Dad says when he visits the hospital, holding Emma with the careful precision of someone who's handled many babies before. Looks like her mother. She has your eyes, Mom coos, and I can see the pride in her face, the joy of becoming a grandmother. Dad bounces Emma gently, and for a moment, I see his face soften, see something that might be wonder cross his features. But when he hands her back to Jennifer, his expression returns to its usual neutral mask. Babies are a lot of work, he tells me. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Practical advice. Always practical advice, never emotional connection. 3 years later, when our son David is born, the scene repeats itself. Dad holds his grandson, makes appropriate comments about the baby's health and appearance, and offers practical advice about parenthood. But he doesn't tell me he's proud of me for becoming a father, doesn't share his own memories of my childhood, doesn't bridge the gap between us that seems to widen with each passing year. I throw myself into work even harder, as if financial success might somehow fill the void that Dad's approval never has. I start my own investment firm, Reynolds Capital Management, and within 5 years, we're managing over $1 billion in assets. I'm featured on the cover of Fortune magazine, invited to speak at Davos, asked to testify before Congress about financial regulations. The accolades pile up like snow, each one briefly satisfying before melting away into the need for more. More success, more recognition, more proof that I'm worthy of the pride that Dad keeps locked away like a family secret. I'm opening an office in London, I tell him during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. The firm is expanding internationally. That's good, son. International business can be tricky. Make sure you understand the tax implications. Even my expansion into global markets merits nothing more than practical advice and a cautionary note. The years pass in a blur of achievement and emptiness. My children grow up seeing less of me than I'd like, but I tell myself I'm building something for them, creating a legacy they can be proud of. Jennifer handles most of the parenting, and she's brilliant at it, patient and loving in ways that come naturally to her. But I notice that I'm becoming more like Dad than I'd care to admit. When Emma brings home straight A's, I tell her that's good, but reminds her not to slack off. When David wins the school science fair, I congratulate him, but suggest he focus on his other subjects too. I'm doling out the same qualified praise, the same measured responses, the same emotional distance that shaped my own childhood. The realization hits me like a physical blow. I'm perpetuating the cycle, passing on the same withholding of approval that marked my relationship with Dad. I'm becoming the kind of father who loves his children but can't quite bring himself to show it in the way they need. I try to change, make an effort to be more present, more expressive. But the patterns are deeply ingrained, and breaking them feels like trying to speak a foreign language I never learned properly. Dad's health starts to decline when he's in his 70s. Nothing dramatic, just the gradual wearing down that comes with age. His arthritis makes it harder for him to work on the cars he loves, and he starts spending more time in his chair, reading or watching television. Mom calls me more frequently, sharing updates about his doctor visits and medications. She's worried about him, though she tries to hide it behind cheerful chatter about the grandchildren and neighborhood news. "He's getting older, Michael," she tells me during one of these calls. "We both are. Maybe you could visit more often." There's no accusation in her voice, just a gentle suggestion that carries the weight of time passing and opportunities slipping away. I promise to visit more, and I do make an effort. Jennifer and I start driving up for long weekends, bringing the kids to see their grandparents. Dad seems to enjoy these visits, though he expresses his pleasure in his typical understated way. "Good to see you, son," he says when I walk in the door. "How was the drive?" We talk about safe topics, the weather, the stock market, the kids' schools. I tell him about my latest business ventures, and he listens with polite interest, asking practical questions about logistics and finances. But we never talk about feelings, never bridge the emotional distance that's defined our relationship for 40 years. The barbecue happens on a Saturday in late spring, one of those perfect days when the weather is warm but not hot, when the air smells like freshly cut grass and possibility. Dad has been feeling better lately, his spirits lifted by the arrival of warm weather and the promise of another summer. "I'm going to grill some steaks," he announces at breakfast. And there's something in his voice that I haven't heard in years, a note of anticipation, of simple pleasure in the prospect of cooking outdoors. The family gathers in the backyard, a motley crew of relatives and friends that includes my Uncle Bob, Cousin Sarah, and several of their neighbors. Mom has outdone herself with side dishes, the picnic table groaning under the weight of potato salad, corn on the cob, and her famous apple pie. Dad stands at the grill, spatula in hand, wearing the ridiculous apron that reads, "Kiss the Cook," that Mom bought him as a joke years ago. He looks more relaxed than I've seen him in months, actually smiling as he tends to the steaks and engages in good-natured banter with Uncle Bob about the proper way to achieve the perfect sear. I'm sitting at the picnic table, watching my children play in the yard, when Dad walks over with 2 beers. He hands me one and sits down beside me, something he's never done before. Usually he hovers on the periphery of family gatherings, present but not quite engaged. "Beautiful day," he says, and I nod, surprised by this attempt at casual conversation. It is. The kids are having a great time. We sit in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Emma chase David around the swing set, while Jennifer takes photos with her phone. The scene is Norman Rockwell perfect, the kind of family moment that makes you believe in the goodness of the world. "You know," Dad says suddenly, his voice carrying a weight I've never heard before, "I've been thinking lately about all the things I should have said over the years." I turn to look at him, startled by this unexpected opening. His face is serious, more serious than I've ever seen it. And there's something in his eyes that might be regret. "Dad, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupts, his voice firm but not harsh. "I've been thinking about it a lot lately, about how I've been as a father, about all the times I should have told you how proud I am of you." The words hit me like a physical blow. Proud. The word I've been waiting to hear my entire life. The validation I've chased through Harvard and Wall Street and every achievement in between. "I always knew you were capable of great things," he continues, his voice growing stronger. Even when you were little, bringing home those test papers with the gold stars, I could see it. The intelligence, the determination, the drive to succeed. I always knew you'd make something of yourself. I'm stunned into silence, my beer forgotten in my hand. This is the conversation I've dreamed of having with him, the moment of connection I've been seeking for 40 years. Then why didn't you ever tell me? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. He's quiet for a long moment, staring out at the yard where his grandchildren are playing. When he speaks, his voice is heavy with regret. My father was a hard man, Michael. Came from nothing. Worked his way up through pure determination and grit. He believed that praise made you soft, that telling a child he was special would make him lazy and entitled. He never once told me he was proud of me. Never once said I'd done well at anything. He pauses, takes a sip of his beer, and I can see the pain in his eyes. I promised myself I'd be different with you. I'd be warmer, more supportive. But when you were born, when I held you for the first time, I was terrified. Terrified that I'd mess you up, that I'd fail you the way I felt my father had failed me. So I fell back on what I knew, the only model of fatherhood I'd ever seen. The revelation hits me like a thunderbolt. All these years, I thought his silence meant he didn't care, that he wasn't proud of me. But it was the opposite. He cared so much that he was paralyzed by the fear of doing wrong. I thought if I kept you humble, if I didn't let success go to your head, you'd keep striving, keep achieving. I thought I was protecting you from becoming complacent. He turns to look at me directly, and I see tears in his eyes. I never realized I was withholding the one thing you needed most. The dam breaks, and suddenly I'm crying too. 40 years of pent-up emotion pouring out in the backyard where I used to play as a child. Dad reaches over and pulls me into a hug, the first real hug I can remember him giving me since I was very small. I'm so proud of you, Michael, he whispers into my ear. I've always been proud of you. Everything you've accomplished, the man you've become, the father you are to your children. I'm proud of all of it. We sit there crying together, two grown men finally having the conversation we should have had decades ago. The rest of the family pretends not to notice, but I catch Mom wiping her eyes with her apron, and I know she's been waiting for this moment as long as I have. I love you, Dad, I tell him, the words coming easier than I expected. I love you too, son. I always have. I just didn't know how to show it. We talk for another hour, sharing stories and memories, filling in the emotional gaps that have defined our relationship for so long. He tells me about his own father, about the poverty and hardship that shaped his worldview. I tell him about the years of seeking his approval, about how his silence affected me. I'm sorry, he says simply. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you needed me to be. You were the father you knew how to be, I reply, and you raised me to be better than that. I'm going to break the cycle with Emma and David. You already have, he says, watching my children play. I can see it in how you are with them. You're doing what I never could. The barbecue continues around us, but we're lost in our own world, making up for lost time, bridging the gap that seemed unbridgeable just hours before. When it's time to leave, Dad hugs me again, longer this time, and I feel something settle in my chest that I didn't even know was missing. Drive safely, he says as we load the kids into the car, and call me when you get home. I will, Dad. I love you. I love you too, son. More than you know. The drive home is quiet, the kids asleep in the back seat, Jennifer dozing in the passenger seat. I'm alone with my thoughts, replaying the conversation over and over, marveling at how much can change in a single afternoon. I call Dad when we get home, as promised, and we talk for another hour. It's the longest conversation we've ever had, and it feels like the beginning of something new between us. I'm glad we finally talked, I tell him before hanging up. Me too, son. Me too. The phone call comes at 3 a.m, 7 days later. I'm deep in sleep when the shrill ring cuts through the darkness, and I fumble for the phone, my heart already pounding with the premonition that comes with late-night calls. Michael? Mom's voice is shaky, barely controlled. You need to come home. Your father, he's gone. The words don't register at first. Gone. Such a simple word. Such a final word. What do you mean, gone? Mom, what happened? He had a heart attack in his sleep. The paramedics tried everything, but… Michael, he's gone. The phone slips from my hand, clattering to the floor. Jennifer is awake now, reaching for me, her face full of concern and fear. I'm shaking, the grief hitting me like a physical blow. 7 days. 7 days since we had the conversation that changed everything between us. 7 days since he told me he was proud of me. Since we finally bridged the gap that had defined our relationship for 40 years. The funeral is everything Dad would have wanted. Simple, dignified, focused on the man he was, rather than the things he'd accomplished. The church is packed with people whose lives he touched. Co-workers from the factory, neighbors, friends from his bowling league. I give the eulogy, standing at the podium where I've spoken at business conferences and charity galas. But this is different. This is personal. This is about love and loss and the complicated nature of family relationships. Richard Reynolds was a man of few words, I begin, my voice shaking slightly. But the words he chose mattered. He was a man who believed in hard work, in doing right by your family, in treating people with respect and dignity. I pause, looking out at the sea of faces, seeing my own grief reflected in their eyes. He wasn't perfect. He'd be the first to tell you that. He made mistakes, had regrets, wished he'd done some things differently. But he was a good man, a man who loved his family, even when he didn't always know how to show it. I tell them about our conversation at the barbecue, about the words of love and pride that came 40 years too late, but arrived just in time. There's not a dry eye in the church when I finish. He told me he was proud of me, I conclude, and I want you all to know that I was proud of him too. Proud to be his son, proud to carry his name, proud to have learned from his example even when I didn't understand it. The burial is private, just family and close friends. As they lower the casket into the ground, I think about all the conversations we never had, all the words left unsaid. But I also think about that perfect afternoon in the backyard, about the gift of understanding that came just in time. I'm going to miss him, Jennifer says as we walk back to the car. Me too, I reply. But I'm grateful for that last conversation. Grateful that we finally understood each other. He was always proud of you, you know, she says. Even when he couldn't say it. I could see it in his eyes whenever he talked about you. I nod, knowing she's right. Love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it comes disguised as practical advice and measured responses. Sometimes it's expressed through sacrifice and hard work, rather than words of affirmation. The weeks following the funeral pass in a blur of grief and adjustment. I find myself calling Dad's number out of habit, forgetting for a moment that he's gone. Mom struggles with the emptiness of their house, the silence where his presence used to be. I spend more time with her, helping her sort through Dad's belongings, listening to her stories about their life together. She shows me photos I've never seen before, tells me about the young man she fell in love with, the dreams they shared, the fears that shaped their parenting. He worried about you constantly, she tells me one afternoon as we go through his desk. Even when you were successful, even when you were making more money than we ever dreamed of. He worried that he hadn't prepared you for the world, that he hadn't given you what you needed. She pulls out a folder filled with newspaper clippings and magazine articles, every mention of my name or my company carefully cut out and saved. He kept every article about you, she says. Every interview, every award, every mention in the business press. He had a whole scrapbook, but he was too embarrassed to show it to you. I stare at the clippings, years of my professional life documented and preserved, proof of a pride that was never expressed but always present. He was so proud of you, Michael. He just didn't know how to show it. I'm crying again, grief and love and regret all mixed together. I think about all the times I wished for his approval, all the achievements that felt hollow, because they weren't acknowledged by the man whose opinion mattered most. I wish I'd known. I whisper. He should have told you, Mom says firmly. That's on him, not you. You were a wonderful son, and he knew it. The healing process is slow and complicated. I find myself thinking about Dad constantly, replaying our conversations, analyzing our relationship, trying to understand the man behind the stoic facade. I also find myself changing as a father. The walls I'd built around my emotions start to crumble, and I make a conscious effort to be more open with Emma and David, to express my pride in them more freely. "I'm proud of you," I tell Emma when she brings home another perfect report card. "Not just because of your grades, but because of the person you're becoming. You're kind and thoughtful and curious about the world." Her face lights up in a way that reminds me of my own childhood hunger for approval. But unlike me, she won't have to wait 40 years to hear those words. "I'm proud of you too, Dad," she says, and the simple statement hits me harder than any business accolade ever has. I think about Dad every day, about the lessons he taught me both intentionally and inadvertently. He showed me the importance of hard work and perseverance, but he also showed me the cost of emotional distance. He taught me to strive for excellence, but he also taught me about the danger of withholding love. A year after his death, I established the Richard Reynolds Foundation, a scholarship fund for first-generation college students from working-class families. It's a small way to honor his memory, to help other young people achieve the dreams he never had the chance to pursue. At the Foundation's first award ceremony, I stand before a group of bright, ambitious young people who remind me of myself at their age. They're hungry for success, eager to prove themselves, desperate to make their families proud. Success isn't just about what you achieve, I tell them. It's about who you become in the process. It's about the values you carry forward, the relationships you build, the love you share with the people who matter most. I pause, thinking about Dad, about the conversation that changed everything between us. Don't wait to tell the people you love how you feel about them. Don't assume they know. Don't let pride or fear or old patterns keep you from expressing what's in your heart, because you never know when it might be too late. The students listen intently, but I wonder if they really understand. Maybe you have to live through the loss to appreciate the urgency of love, to understand that time is the most precious gift we have. After the ceremony, I drive to the cemetery where Dad is buried. His headstone is simple, just his name and dates, the way he would have wanted it. I sit in the grass beside his grave, something I do whenever I need to think clearly. "I miss you, Dad," I say aloud, feeling slightly foolish but needing to say the words anyway. I miss our conversations, even the awkward ones. I miss the possibility of getting to know you better. The wind rustles through the trees, and for a moment, I can almost hear his voice, practical and measured, telling me to take care of myself, to drive safely, to make sure I'm eating enough vegetables. "I'm trying to be the father you couldn't be," I continue. "I'm trying to break the cycle, to give Emma and David what we both needed. I hope I'm doing it right." I sit there for a long time, watching the sun set over the rolling hills, thinking about legacy and love and the complicated nature of family relationships. Dad may be gone, but his influence continues, shaped now by understanding rather than confusion. As I drive home, I call Emma, who's away at college now, studying pre-med at Stanford. "Hi, Dad," she says, and I can hear the smile in her voice. "How was your day?" "Good," I tell her. "I was thinking about you, about how proud I am of you, not just because of your grades or your achievements, but because of who you are as a person." "I know, Dad. You tell me all the time." "Good," I say. "I hope I never stop." "You won't," she says with certainty. "That's just who you are." Maybe that's the real lesson Dad taught me, not through his words, but through his silence. He showed me the cost of withholding love, the price of keeping pride locked away like a family secret. He gave me the gift of understanding what not to do, how not to be. In the end, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's how love works sometimes, passed down through generations not as a blueprint to follow, but as a mistake to avoid. Maybe his greatest gift to me was the recognition that I could do better, be better, love better. "I love you, Emma," I say before hanging up. "I love you too, Dad. See you soon." The conversation ends, but the love continues, flowing forward into the future, into the next generation, unbroken and unafraid. And somewhere, I like to think, Dad is smiling, finally proud of the man I've become, the father I've learned to be. The circle is complete, the cycle is broken, and love in all its complicated beauty finds a way to survive and thrive and grow, even in the spaces between words, even in the silence that once seemed so empty but now feels so full.